Marianne, how are you doing?
Good, thank you. It was nice meeting you yesterday.
It was great meeting you yesterday. You're such a busy woman. You're out there on the campaign trail in Arizona, and then I understand you're going to Louisiana this week as well. You
Yep,
are hitting the road, my friend.
I am.
Well, I'm
I
so
am.
happy to speak with you today. My name is Billy Harfosh. This is Show Up Arizona. And I wanted to start, Marianne. Of course, you're a candidate. You are in the race still for president of the United States. I wanted to start with a statement that you recently put out there. You said, I'm not trying at this point to win the nomination. The president has done that. I'm still out there because I'm hoping to get enough delegates to make it to the convention, to have a voice, to represent the interests of those who are basically neglected by the status quo. While I respect that statement, Marianne, my question is this. I just was on Twitter, X, watching a video of the president today. Listen, the gentleman is aging, and there's a lot of people, Democrats and Republicans alike, that say he might not have the mental capacity to move forward come to when we get to the convention. There is a chance that the powers that be do something and replace him with Newsom or Harris or Michelle Obama or yourself. Did that factor into your calculus?
Well, I don't want to see someone's mental hardship as a career opportunity. Do you know what I'm saying? There's something crass about that conversation. I'm aware of the raw politics of it, of course. But even if the president, as you know, I hope on a human level that he has no problems, there's more than being the nominee. There's having a voice, there's having an influence. Now, the rules are such that even if the president, not because of some challenge, but just because of his not doing well in the polls, people being concerned about his age or whatever, let's say he were to decide to drop out, then what would happen is his delegates would then be able to make a decision. Perhaps there's a lot of word about Michelle Obama, Newsom, Pritzker, whomever. If I have delegates, it's all that much more important. And that's why I have felt, and I know you were at one of my events in Arizona, I feel that when I say that to people in Illinois, in Arizona, or anywhere else, first of all, people are happy to know I'm not delusional. Like there is a question and understandable, like, why are you here? You know what I'm saying? But when I say to people, I'm here because if I can get 15%, now the highest we've gotten so far is 9.1% in Oklahoma. If we can build on the momentum and I can get to 15%, I already have a couple of DNC members who wish to be my delegates, but that's really what this is all about. Then you're at the convention, then you have a voice and you're in the game. And that's what, and I think people hear that and people are going, I get it. I get it. He's the nominee. He doesn't need my vote. But if I stand for the things that Williamson stands for, whether it has to do with an economic U-turn, ceasefire, or anything else, then voting for me makes sense to people, and that's what I'm hoping will happen in these rest of these primary states.
Miss Williamson, let's be frank here. In order to defeat your political opponents, you have to understand them and you have to know them and you have to understand their supporters. You have not been shy throughout your career about speaking out against Donald Trump. But the truth is, he still has a large percentage of supporters in this country that are strong supporters. What is it about Donald Trump? What is his ability to tap into the energy, and as a spiritual woman yourself, the frequency of Americans that just say, you know what? I still support this man despite all the court cases.
In some people, clearly, he is tapping into something low level, fear, hatred, separation, and so forth. But there are also a lot of really, good people, smart, good people who I know who are willing to vote for Donald Trump. Not that they don't see that, Billy, but they don't give it the same kind of credence that I and perhaps you do. They say, yeah, he's all those things, but I like his policies. Now, I have noticed though that when I say I was having a conversation with someone the other night, and I said, but you can't separate them. And I saw a concern on the man's face. So I think we need to remember that. A lot of people just like his policies and really don't care about the other stuff. Many of us feel that the other stuff is essential to his being. And no matter who you are, everything you do is infused with the consciousness with which you do it. And his consciousness is neither compassionate nor empathetic. Also, I think something that I find very concerning is not only his lack of concern for people, his lack of concern for the US Constitution, his lack of concern for the Declaration of Independence, which I have to tell you, I think he's never read. And when he first became president, there was a story that I read in the news that he had some meeting with people who were on his transition team or whatever, and they were basically teaching him the US Constitution. And then, like a child, like a 12-year-old, at a certain point, he rolled his eyes and went like this. I mean, this man doesn't care. This man, this is why he is attracted to someone like a Viktor Orban in Hungary. The dictators, like he likes that kind of strongman power. That's what's dangerous. That's what's most dangerous about
What
that.
can you give him credit for? You have called for a ceasefire in Gaza. We see what's happening, continuing in the Ukraine. A lot of people, his supporters, say, well, say what you want about his tweets, his personality. He might not be a guy that I want watching my kids babysitting, but there were no new wars. There was relatively world peace, in quotes, under Donald Trump. And look at the alternative.
Well, it's interesting. I was mentioning in Arizona yesterday, isn't it fascinating that he hasn't said one word about what's going on in Gaza? I mean, this man blabs about everything. He has not said a word. So we don't know what he would do. We know he doesn't personally get along with Benjamin Netanyahu, but in terms of what's actually going on there, don't kid yourself. I don't think anybody knows. I don't consider Donald Trump a ceasefire candidate. You know what I'm saying? Um, I think Ukraine, we do know, but I think that probably has less to do with a desire for peace and more to do with the fact that he and Putin are buddies. So if you say, yes, there have been no new wars, but if you are cozying up to some of the biggest warmongers on the planet, that to me is deeply concerning.
I'm sure you heard Chuck Schumer's speech the other day, and I'm sure you've heard calls across the country and the world for a ceasefire in Gaza. I understand that you've publicly called for a ceasefire. Is that correct?
Mhm.
So, if you were president right now in this moment, and a lot of people are very scared out there with what's happening, how would you enforce that? Obviously, you're not the president or the prime minister of Israel. You would be the president of the United States. How would you enforce a ceasefire?
Well, it's not the United States cannot enforce a policy, but what we can do is say we're not giving any more money for it. And what we can say is we're not giving any more weapons for it. That's what we can do. We enforce our own policy, and no policy, either domestic or international, I believe, should transgress against our own humanitarian values. We have the Leahy Act. We've obviously disregarded it, but it is an act of Congress which says that we cannot give weapons, we cannot give money for any military activity that transgresses against the human rights that we hold sacred. Obviously, we ourselves have transgressed against that time after time, but at this point, Biden looks weak, being so obviously, we know he's frustrated with Netanyahu, and yet the change doesn't happen that needs to happen. Somebody needs to say no to Benjamin Netanyahu. Someone needs to say no more. And Netanyahu keeps saying we just need a little more time to destroy those tunnels. But the problem, and Biden has made this clear, it's not. I don't think anybody um, is disrespecting well, some people are, but most Americans are not disrespecting the intention of Israel to destroy any infrastructure that the military arm of Hamas has that could be used to further harm Israel. The issue is the harm that's happening to so many civilians in Gaza and the fact that Netanyahu will not even provide a plan. In fact, that he has actually blocked humanitarian aid. That's where the real despicable, unacceptable behavior is coming from it, absolutely the United States should not be okay with this
And
in any way.
Marianne, a lot of us in the media, or a lot of us political nerds or geopolitical nerds, we're refreshing, our articles and Twitter and social media, and we're into the day to day of these wars in Ukraine and in Gaza. But I got to selfishly ask you, because it's something I've been asking people that are much more intelligent and more powerful than I. And I'm going to ask you this: end game. Like, what is the end game here in Gaza? What is the end game in Putin's war in Ukraine? Like, everyone's into the day-to-day stuff, but even when the powers that be are asked, they don't have a clear answer. Is it a two-state solution? Is it eventually, negotiating with Putin, giving up some portions of Ukraine? Like, how does this all come to hopefully a peaceful ending?
Well, which do you want to talk about? Do you
Let's
want to
go
talk
Gaza
about
first. Let's go
Gaza
Gaza
first?
first.
Okay. That is the problem that the United States keeps expressing, that very question. What is the end game? And first of all, what is your plan for protecting these civilians? That's the first question. And the second, what is your end game? Now, this is a very gnarly issue. And this is where Biden is obviously in conflict with Netanyahu himself. Biden is saying that Biden is saying we need to get to a ceasefire faster and the end of this war faster. I say we need to get to it now. He says we need the release of the hostages, which I totally agree with. And I think there are more phone calls going on and more negotiations than we even know. And then we have to deal with this path to a two-state solution, which Biden has said that he supports. Now, remember, it's not like, I mean, this is an age-old conversation, not age-old when you think of, we're really going back ages when you talk about those peoples. However, even in terms of the modern era, Bill Clinton tried. He did try. And of course, Jimmy Carter always had it right on this issue, actually. It's a very difficult thing, but the United States has never put its foot down in the way we need to and needed to over the last few decades. So I heard Netanyahu on television yesterday. Dana Bash was showing him Schumer's speech. I thought Schumer's speech was strong. Obviously, Netanyahu said it's totally inappropriate. And then he made some comment in his in that interview. He said, and people trying to thrust down our throats, a Palestinian state. Well, you know what? Yeah, the world is going to do that now. This cannot continue. It is dangerous for the whole region. It is dangerous for the world. And I think that's exactly why Schumer said what he said. Just to hear the way Netanyahu said, you're not going to just thrust down our throats a Palestinian state like that's unacceptable to him. Well, what's unacceptable to the rest of the world is that the status quo, even pre-October 7th, should continue. There must be a Palestinian state, and the United States must have equal commitment to the safety, security, and sovereignty of both peoples. That's
And
the
Marianne,
only.
I think as I talk to voters around the state of Arizona, and it's interesting this time around, a lot of people, we're concerned about our pocketbooks, we're concerned about the border, we're concerned about healthcare, all the things you talk about, as well as foreign policy. And just to, follow up here on Putin's war in Ukraine, would you get on the horn? Would you get on the phone with him as president and say, look, we need to negotiate this thing out. We need to get you and Zelensky in a room, lock it up, and get this ironed out? Or would you continue to support Ukraine militarily and financially and see where the chips may fall?
Well, I'm not naive enough to think that your former description is even possible. Okay, Vladimir, Putin, Zelensky, and Marianne, let's sit down and talk and work it out. It's not that simple.
That's
I
what
realize.
Trump thinks he can do. He thinks he
Hmm,
can do that.
yeah, well, I don't. I I do think that Trump would probably be eager to not so much work it out with both of them in the room, but to withhold the support to Ukraine that Ukraine needs in order to continue. Now, I've done a little bit of back and forth in my own mind about this. Ukraine is a sovereign country. Now, once again, let's go back. The United States, we know, does not have clean hands here. The United States was poking the bear. The United States with the Aegis missiles in Poland, all kinds of things. But I have never felt, and I think most people would agree, none of what the United States has done justifies the barbaric dictatorial actions and imperialistic behavior of Vladimir Putin. For a long time, I thought, well, let's see how it goes and let's see how the counteroffensive works. And the counteroffensive has not worked. And we are at a point now where it's like this. It's a stalemate. It's a war of attrition at this point. So I went through a period in my mind, pretty much like you just said. Okay, maybe it's time to deal, right? Maybe it's time to deal. And if you say it's time to deal, then by definition, that means you buy into the idea that Putin will be satisfied. He takes some, he takes a pause. He takes more, he takes a pause. Now, some people say, and this will be it, he won't want any more. One of the things that influences me a lot is the attitude of Europeans. They live right there. That's the thing. To us, it's still concept. They live right there. It is significant that Sweden said, okay, we want a NATO now. It is significant that Finland said, okay, we want a NATO now. How they see it means a lot to me. And I was on a train. This is just anecdotal, but it has stayed with me. I was on a train with a young couple from the Czech Republic. And it was towards the beginning of the war. And I said to him, I said to the gentleman, I said, you know, a lot of people in the United States talk about Putin's nuclear arsenal, which Putin has been talking up in the last 2 days, you notice. And, you know, we think, you know, for us to be involved and to support Ukraine is just really dangerous because Putin could drop a nuclear bomb. And this young man reached over to me and he said to me very intently, we live there. If he were to drop a nuke, it would be on us. It wouldn't be on you. And let me tell you something, he said. We are more afraid of an invasion than of his nukes. We must not be naive here.
Well, that gave me chills. And you're right. It is conceptual to us in a sense as Americans, and they are right there. We're speaking to Marianne Williamson. Go to marianne2024.com to learn more and to help out her campaign. Two last questions for you. You know, very quickly, as a woman that obviously clearly loves this country, as do I, what does it say about our country when, in the end, odds are, I'm sorry to say it, we could end up very well with Biden v. Trump, two elderly gentlemen for the White House, and 70%, over 70% of Americans, Marianne, as you know, do not want to see Biden v. Trump round two. Like, what does that say? We have hundreds of millions of people in this country, the most extraordinary, inventive, creative people, and we're stuck with this again? What's going
Well,
on here?
you asked, what does it say about this country? Well, let's start with what does it say about the American people? What it says about the American people is that we are smart to be outraged by it. The problem in this and in so many things, Billy, is not the American people. The problem is a sclerotic political system that acts like a lid, holding down and suppressing the fullest expression of the will of the people. So what it says about this country is that we have a real big problem because that's a suppression of democracy. If we have full democracy here, and I can tell you this from being a candidate for the last year, a full vital democracy would mean that the American people had a chance to really hear what all of the candidates had to say. But there's a political media industrial complex. So the DNC decided it was going to be Trump. It was going to be Biden. That was just their decision. They come up with this narrative that we don't primary a sitting incumbent president. Although, hello, Eugene McCarthy, Bobby Kennedy Sr., I'm old enough to remember. There's no special assignation for presidential incumbency or anything like that. And then you had the fact that CNN, MSNBC, and other mainstream media sources were willing to go along and to invisibilize anyone that wasn't Biden. So what it says about this country is not a problem with the people. The people are fine. And I think most people, when they realize that that occurred, that kind of candidate suppression, are not happy about it, whether they're on the right or the left. I've seen many people say, look, I don't like Williamson's policies, but it's terrible the way her campaign was suppressed. So once again, obviously, it's not about me, but it's about how the country is working in issue after issue, where somebody representing huge corporate or political or financial forces and interests are placed before the full expression of the American people. Full expression of the American people, as you say, and it probably would not be Trump and Biden once more.
Real quick, Biden gets elected. His first call is to Marianne Williamson. Marianne, it's President Joe Biden. I want you in my administration. Yes or no?
That would not happen. But any call I got from him asking for help that would give me any opportunity to be of service to my country, then of course I would say yes, sir.
Last one, and you've been very gracious. Go to Marianne2024.com. Here's a curveball, but I know you can handle it because you're a very intelligent woman. Why hasn't any president, including Obama, including Trump, including Biden, released the documents on the JFK assassination? Why hasn't that happened? I had Judge Andrew Napolitano on my show, and he told me that, I had a conversation with Trump on his final days, and I said, hey, there's one thing you promised, one thing you promised. And Trump said, yeah, what is it, buddy? I'll get it done right now. He said, what about those JFK documents? He said, someday when we're on the phone and nobody's listening, I'll let you know why. What the hell is going on with those documents, and why won't a president release it?
I saw that. I saw that. I saw that. One can only imagine. But I'll tell you something. I was 11 years old when JFK was assassinated. There's a saying, you're as sick as your secrets. It's America's never been the same. The fact that we haven't really known and that no kind of justice has been done. First of all, it's interesting because whoever pulled that off, whoever they were brilliantly successful. And there are all kinds of things. How many people on the grassy knoll died within 5 years? I mean, something. And most of those people are probably gone. But still, we should know. And the fact that the American people have, it's a sickness in the soul of the United States that we still don't totally know what happened there. And as president, I would want to do whatever possible to get this out, make this happen. But then if Donald Trump won't do it,
That's what I said. Say what you want about Trump, but if anyone's going to do it to be that guy just for the publicity alone, and if
yeah,
he won't do it,
yeah,
what is going on there?
yeah. Well, there are a lot of things, Billy, that I think you don't know until you get there. And you can't really promise until you get there.
Well said. Marianne Williamson, I appreciate you. I appreciate your talents. I
Thank
wish
you.
you the best of luck. Like
Thank
I said, you were, very open and honest, and you didn't give us any questions we couldn't ask today. And we'll see what happens when we get to the convention. You never know. Marianne Williamson, Marianne2024.com. Thank you so much for your time.
thank you
Peace and
so
love,
much.
and we'll see you down the road.
Thank you so much.
All right. Bye now.